Hello, I'm Glenn Samuel and I'm a commercial and landscape photographer from New South Wales, Australia.
Just like to offer a big shout out to Touchdown Digital, the sponsor of this week's video.
I think the revelation for me for my photography came in 1977 when at the age of 14 I developed my first negative in a makeshift darkroom which was our family bathroom at the time. And it wasn't until I developed my very first negative that I realised that photography was going to be for me. And it surely has been. It surely has been over 4 decades. And it wasn't until I developed that first negative in the makeshift darkroom, when I had it in the chemical and it started to appear after being exposed onto the sheet of paper, that I did realise that, hey, I can create something that's absolutely beautiful and I'll never forget it. And that's basically how I learnt photography. So that was the revelation for me, and that's how I got started in my photography journey. What I would like to talk to you about is a few things, and basically this is aimed for the new photographer or even the veteran photographer that might have just got back into this fantastic pastime. And the first thing I want to talk to you about is light. Now, light is everything in photography. Without light, you don't have an image, and you're out there in all types of light, but you're making a photograph. Remember that word, making. You're making a photograph. So it's imperative that you understand how light works and how it interprets the scene that you wish to photograph. Make light your friend, your best friend. In actual fact, the light is your mistress. You need to understand it, look after it, and know how to work with it. Because if you can understand light, you will understand photography, and understanding the light is the craft of photography. Once you learn the craft of photography, then the art will surely follow. The next thing is know your camera. Don't be intimidated by it. Get to know it. Get to know how to use it in the dark without having to second guess your decision on the settings that you've made. So get to know your camera. That's very, very important. Scouting. Scouting is probably one of the best ways to find locations. Now, I'll just put up an image up here now, and this image was taken at a place called the Richmond Lowlands, and I'll put a few more of these images at the end of this video. And this came about from a scouting mission that I undertook. Now, the Richmond Lowlands, I hadn't been there for over 20 years, so I couldn't remember it. I didn't know much about it. So I spent 5 full days driving to this Richmond Lowlands area and just driving around the little country lanes. And I was making a note, both mentally and physically, and taking photos with my phone as a reference point. And that is probably the best way to scout. You can use all the apps, Google Earth, Google Maps, and that's very good. And I understand that people can't travel to a location just for scouting. But if you can, scouting physically is a much better way of doing it. For when you come back to that location, you're ready to go. You're not traipsing around in the dark trying to find that location that you remembered or seen on Google Maps or Google Earth. But if you can get out there and physically scout the location, your photography will improve tenfold. So scouting is very, very important. Own the moment. Now, remember I said you're making a photograph. Owning the moment is being there and appreciating nature. We should all appreciate nature. And if you don't, I think you should start. Because if you can appreciate nature and you're a landscape photographer, your images will be far superior to anybody else's who doesn't think the same. So by owning the moment when you're there on location, you feel something. If you can feel the landscape, that will transfer into your images, and that is so important. That the old saying is, don't shoot what you see, but shoot what you feel. So owning the moment is very, very good to do, and I suggest that you try it, owning the moment. You make a photograph. That's correct, you make a photograph. It's not just a photo. Anyone can take a photo. Anyone can jump out of a car, take a quick snapshot, and away they go. That's not a photo. You make a photograph. A photograph is a production where you have to put everything in place before you actually make it. It's like making a cake. It's like building a house. You have to put everything together and make that solid object. So you make a photograph. You don't just take a photo, you make a photograph. So when somebody says to you, what are you doing? You simply say, I'm making a photograph. Filters. Now I use filters a lot. Now I know you can use filters in Lightroom and Photoshop, but for me I like to use filters on site whilst I'm there, because I can get a great idea and a gauge as to how the image is going to look like while I'm there. So I always use filters. That's medium grads, soft edge grads, and neutral density filters. And I also have a reverse ND grad for horizon line sunrises and sunsets. So I prefer to use filters out in the field. And if you haven't tried that, I suggest you do. It's far superior than what you can do on Lightroom, Photoshop, or any editing platform. So I always use my filters out in the field. Last but not least is printing. Now printing is super important, probably out of everything besides light and composition. Printing your images, I believe, is a must. And the reason being is that your photography is a pie chart, and it has bits and pieces in it from the time you scout your image to the time you get there to the time you make the photograph. Then what? The last piece of the puzzle is printing. I'm an advocate for printing images. Leaving them on a computer or a hard drive, it just doesn't, that's an unfinished project. I believe printing is fantastic, whether you print them yourself or you get somebody to print them for you. Try and print as many photographs as you can, because if you go out on location with that mindset that, hey, I'm going to print this image, you will give it everything you've got to make that image work. It's a bit like owning the moment. You give it everything you've got to capture that moment, because if that's the scene you want to photograph and you've put everything into it, why not print your image? Why not print it out and actually feel the print in your hands, knowing full well that you've made a photograph and you've printed it, and there it is. That's the finished project. So printing is very, very important. Now these next few images you'll see, this is from the Richmond lowlands. This took about 10 days to do because I was chasing the light, and this is a very foggy area. It's very flat. Now for people that live in Australia will remember the severe floods we had in the last 2-3 years, and you remember seeing people being taken off the roofs of their homes. Well, this is the area that it happened in, Richmond lowlands, in that vicinity. It's in the Hawkesbury district of northwestern Sydney, and it's full of horse farms, horse studs, polo clubs, and turf farms. And the light you get out there is just absolutely superb, both sunrise and sunset. It works better at sunrise for some reason. You'll see some images here from the sunset venture I took out there, but this was part of a project that I put together. And all these images will be going into a book that I'm going to have published on the Hawkesbury area, and this will be an ongoing process. The book will probably take about 12 to 18 months to come to fruition because I've got a lot of work to do to get those files right, or those images right for printing and then placed into a book. So this is the start of this project. So just keep an eye out for that. I'll certainly let you know when it's all done. But yeah, have a look at these images. I'm very, very happy with them. And it come about from scouting. And I scouted this location for some time, making mental notes and taking photos of areas and looking at what the light was doing. I went out there very early in the morning without the camera because I didn't know what I was looking at, didn't know where I was going, quite frankly. But it's all these little country laneways, and you get in there and you look around and you're mixing it with the turf farms, the horses and the cows. It's absolutely fantastic. But scouting proved to be very effective in this instance, and I will be back out there in the next day or so to add to this portfolio of images which will be going in the book a bit later on. So I thought I'd put all that out there to you. If you like what you see, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Give me a thumbs up, it's much appreciated. It helps this channel grow. If there's any thing you want to know about that particular area, Richmond Lowlands, or anything that we spoke about, these 6 things here today, please put them in the comments box below, and I'd certainly get back to you when I can. So that's it. My name's Glenn Samuel. Thank you for watching Sniper Photography. And as I always say, be nice to yourself, family and friends, but most of all, you keep shooting, keep smiling. Bye for now.